Welcome to the Championship Clubs podcast. I'm your host Michael Casey, and co-hosting with me is a man with over 300 Championship rugby appearances. It's Ben Gulliver. Be sure to check us out on social media at @ChampClubsPod on Instagram and Twitter, and head to YouTube to like and subscribe to the channel. Welcome to the show. I am delighted to say that today's guest is Leicester Tigers captain and England and British and Irish Lions hooker Tom Youngs. Thank you very much for joining us today on the Championship Clubs podcast.
No worries. It's a pleasure to be on, boys. Pleasure to be here.
Hey, Youngsy. Good to see you, mate. Good win at the weekend. How are things up at Tigers at the minute?
Yeah, mate. It was a nice win. Quarter final, into a semi final. Actually, what I loved about it most was post game. We were all a little bit frustrated. Actually, we're still not hitting the straps we want to hit. So pleasing is that's coming from players. That's coming from us as a group and where we want to get to. But yeah, it's nice to be winning some games and into a semi over the years. Obviously, the recent years has been pretty hard work as a Leicester Tigers player and fan. So it's nice to be sort of winning some games. But mate, they're coming thick and fast at the moment. Bath this weekend away on a Sunday, so you're only one loss away from going back again. So we're pushing forward as best we can.
Do you know what's nice as well is that you've got the Bath Leicester game coming up this weekend when both of you you seem to have turned a corner as clubs. And I think when I came on loan up there, I sat in a meeting and I remember Cockers just firing into the boys about the rivalry of that game. And I think we talk about a journey a lot on this show, but like Leicester seem to have gone full circle. You'd have been part of that. And a game like this weekend coming up must get you fired up and, get the heart going a bit.
It does, mate. It's a big game. As you say, the rivalry, which I know very well. I think Steve will know it on, obviously he played a long time at Bath, so he understands it as well. So, it's always a great game. Shame there can't be any fans there, obviously. But, we both sit very equal on points in the table. So, it's a big one. It's a big one.
Yeah. I suppose we're just sort of going to touch on sort of your time in the champ, and we'll go into that in a bit. But what have been sort of the big key changes for you this year with Steve coming in? And from an outsider's view, it's sort of like obviously he's got an unbelievable reputation and work ethic, but the rest of the coaching staff seems to have stayed the same. And like how's that all been? And what's he changed and how's that looking?
He's brought in, not only himself, but he's brought in Alan Walters as well. He's done a massive part of behind the scenes as well. I think we've gone back to a clear identity of what we are, and Steve drives it every day. I think he's got a clear direction where we need to go. He's got a clear plan. It's not reactive whether you win or lose at the weekend. There's a plan in place, and there's probably another plan after that with Steve. He's to the dot, mate. He's unbelievable how organised he is and the way he does it. I just think got a good group of players now. I think Leicester's a big old ship, mate, and it's very been successful over the years, and it's taken some turning around, and we're in the right direction now. There's plenty of work to do to keep it going that way, and we make no bones about it. We're willing all to keep working as hard as what Steve shows us and keep grafting at it. But it just shows some hard work and a clear plan. You start to win some games, and it make the worst thing is though, as I said earlier, is like people start talking about it a little bit, and it's like you're only one loss away from going back. And you just want to keep going forward, and that's the main thing. So, as I said, with that semi-final, we reached that, but really feet firmly on the ground. We know how much more where we want to go to, and how much more that's going to take us to get us there.
I just think it's great for English rugby. It's obviously good for the people of Leicester as well. But there's a definite change in sort of body language, and like with yourselves and with it around the place. It just looks like a lot more positive environment, which is, as a sort of former player for 3 months, it's nice to see.
Mate, it's great to be a part of, and it's Steve. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with him. He's a fantastic guy, hell of a coach. Work ethic, as you've alluded to already, is unbelievable. And then those guys underneath him are, really stepped up to the plate and, are really pushing us forward as well. So it's great to be a part of.
Cool.
So Tom, obviously a stunning time at Leicester and career so far, and on this show we like to sort of shine a light on some of the successes and some of the stories of the Championship and some of the roles that it's played in various players' career. And of course, with yourself back in the early days, the Championship had a pretty pivotal role, I think it's fair to say. Can we sort of delve into those early times with both Nottingham and Bedford?
Yeah, massively. Obviously, they were huge. You know, the Bedford one, I was centre then, and went there for 2 seasons, and it was fantastic. Loved every part of it, and it was a real stepping stone. I think actually, I always alluded to it. It's the first time I really understood, you know, bonus point wins and or bonus point losses and how much that means in the league and stuff like that. It's all well and good playing second team rugby, but there isn't that consequences, and that you're then suddenly a part of people. It's their livelihood, you know, and it means a lot to get a bonus point loss, you know, to fight out. And so I can only praise it massively, what it's done for my career. And obviously then I moved to hooker, and we were trying to tee up to go to Bedford again, but then Nottingham, 𝗂𝗫𝗀𝗀𝗀 swung it around and needed a hooker, and off I went up there. And I did 2.5 seasons, 60 plus games for them, I think it was, and had an absolute whale of time, mate. Loved it, you know, and it was always meant to be a stepping stone back to Leicester, but I always made Nottingham my club or Bedford my club. Wherever I was going to, it wasn't like, oh, this is not good enough for me, you know, kind of thing, which I think some people get very wrong when they go on loan to play. This was like, this is my club. If I go well here, if I play as well as I can, that will give me the best opportunity to step back up to the Premiership. But you know, I had some great years there, and I wouldn't be where I am now without those experiences. Especially with moving position, I wouldn't be here now with those guys who, you know, Nick Rouse, Craig Hammond. There's plenty of them at Nottingham who really helped me along in my transition from centre to hooker, to help me get back into a Leicester Tigers shirt.
I've always wondered, guys, whose idea was that to go from centre to hooker? Was it yours, or were you pushed in there, mate?
No, I wasn't put. It was 𝗖𝗵𝗺𝗺𝗀𝗀𝗀, you know, ex-South African coach. He was here for a while at the Tigers, and he'd seen me sort of all pre-season. I played centre, and I played a few times off the bench of the club under him, and second team games here and there. And then he just said, I think you should move to hooker. I think you should give it a go. And I was pretty keen for it, to be honest. And I probably saw a bigger future in that position if I could do it. You know, it's always, you know, as I always say to a lot of people, you know, talk is cheap, and it is. Like, we can all say, I'm going to go and do this. Actually doing it is the hardest thing to do. So, but no, I got the opportunity to do it. And I said, I went to Nottingham and just played. And Heineken then left, and then Cockers took over the sort of thing and kept me there. And he didn't drag me back for second team games or anything like that. I think 1 or 2 I had to play sometimes a Saturday and a Monday, which obviously not allowed to do anymore. But on the whole, it was Nottingham, all my S&C done at Leicester. But on the whole, it was playing at Nottingham. That's what I was doing.
Mate, you had some good characters there as well, didn't you?
Like, yeah, it was a team. It was a good team.
It was like, I'd have been at Pirates, I think, at the time, and
yeah,
𝗖𝗵𝗺𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 and Hamo, like, they're big characters and good people for you to learn your trade at hooker, mate.
Brilliant people, you know, and Neil Fowkes, you know, Matt Parr, and you know, there was tons of them, mate. You know, they're all, you know, they all helped me so much and were so patient with me. You know, because I balls it up in games. I would balls it up, and I tried to make the best of it I could, but I would balls it up, and they were brilliant at helping me along. And you know, I think people ask me, what was your highlighting best thing you've ever achieved? One of them, honestly, the best thing I've achieved in my life is in my career is that I won Players Player that first year at Nottingham. And that showed to me that I'd actually really brought in, like, how I went in there thinking, you cannot be the guy who rocks up and is just using it as a stepping stone. You've got to buy in. And that was a massive thing for me to win that Players Player of the Year. So that was huge, and a real, you know, a feather in my cap almost of like, actually, no, I did buy in. But, you know, 𝗂𝗫𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 coaching us, they helped me so much. More than they probably realised. They really did.
How were those first few experiences of playing Championship at hooker, obviously having previously played at Bedford as a centre?
Well, mate, you probably know the champ don't mind a fight now and again. It's probably levelled off a bit now, but I'm always game for that. But it was everyone, because I knew that I was moved from a centre to a hooker, was after me. So there was plenty of punching, plenty of fighting at the beginning. Throwing was like throwing a beach ball in the wind at times, so they were interesting, and but I learned from the experiences and got better. So, but they were very interesting. They were great times though. Enjoyed it. As I said, I played 80 minutes most games, and week in week out, and didn't really rest, and just kept playing. Luckily, didn't pick up any injuries and just kept going at it.
Any memorable particular battles in that season, those seasons?
Donny, mate. Donny was always the one going up at Donny. Jesus, always. I remember getting hit once in the face. I didn't even know who hit me, and I punched someone back. Can't remember who it was. I don't think he even hit me. So whoever hit me got away with it. But yeah, there was many times. I remember throwing the ball in and it landed in the opposition scrum half's hands. That was interesting. Even the referee's looking at me going, oh, that's a shocker, isn't it? But there we go.
Boys getting stuck into you.
Yeah.
Or not.
There was, particularly your time in Bedford, you're not the only Tiger that's gone on to have, fantastic careers at Welford Road that went through a similar sort of role, I believe, but particularly in that, was it 2006 to 8 Bedford squad? There was quite a few of you.
Yeah, Dan Cole, Ollie Dodge, but he then carried on playing at Bedford many years. Yeah, we went off, and yeah, we do look back on it as fun times. We had great times, and it's not only that, you can get a bit. I think academy players nowadays, you get kit washed, you get all these bits and bobs, and it's all well and good. But it's a good lesson for you to learn, mate, of one, how to organise your week. Do you know what I mean? Of like, you've got to wash your kit, you've got to be on time at training, all those bits and bobs. Two, as I said earlier, was like, you get a real feel of what a bonus point win does for you in the league, which is huge at times, isn't it? Or a loss, it can really get to understand that. And I think it just teaches you some very, very good lessons of how to get up for a game, for example. It's easy when you first start, you run out at Welford Road or whatever, you're gonna get up for it. But there's times in your career where, well, at the moment, there's no crowds. And I think actually that's taken some people some time to adjust. Where I've had experience of, go to Rotherham away or whatever, and you run around the corner and you're in the 15-metre mark. It's the smallest pitch ever. The change rooms are tiny, and you've got all these experience of like, it's funny, and you're like, but you've also got to get yourself ready to play well for a team. So, it's not only just the playing. There's the life lessons of was huge to learn at 18 years old, 19 years old, and as I say, me and Coley do look back on them and always think how they really did set us up brilliantly for a career.
What about so in like your current squad, when you're obviously one of the senior players and captain, you'll have the young lads that are going out on loan, and how do you obviously you spoke really well about it there. What's your advice to those guys? And it's like, just get out there, get it done, or is it, pick the right path?
Yeah, my biggest advice to them is make it your own club.
Right.
And you go in there. You don't go in there. You don't turn up in any lesson gear. You turn up in their kit. If you haven't got any kit, you don't take any stash. You turn up as one of them. And if you play well there and you become the best player on the pitch, or one of the best players in it, you give yourself the best opportunity to come back. And I think I can't bear players who kind of hide away from going on loan. They almost think it's a step back, and they're people who are not going to make it. It's not. It's about your career, and sometimes you've got to play, and you need to play week in, week out to get better. And I'm very keen on that. Look, and so whenever those guys go, I just speak to the experience. They understand that me and Coley are good because we've done it, and we kind of got that experience. Obviously, times have changed now, but they go there, and a lot more clubs now, more professional, so they have to probably go there more training in a week and stuff like that. But they've got to buy in from the beginning. and enjoy it, because it's a great crack. It's a great crack, the Instagram champ life, that makes me laugh. I love looking at that thing and pop up with something. It always makes me chuckle and reminds me of great times.
Yeah.
We've had some fantastic examples of sort of young Tigers coming to us at Donny. Johnny McPhillips and Ben White in recent seasons. Great to see those guys doing well at Welford Road. We've discussed on this show as well that it perhaps offers a route for the player that isn't the superstar at 18, that perhaps is a little later to develop. And is that something that maybe rings true with yourself? Obviously, I know yours include a positional switch.
It does massively, it's very cutthroat nowadays, isn't it? It's like they make a decision on someone at the age of, as you say, 19, 20. That's early doors, isn't it? That's early doors. And they can make a decision on someone and it doesn't pan out also, but some of those guys, you step back, you've got Harry Wells in the second row for us now. At 18, 19, you wouldn't have thought whatever, but he went and learned some trade at Bedford in the second row, and he's flying now. So, it's important from all aspects as you look at it, as you say, is like it can, you might need to come because you're not quite there or whatever, and then it might give you a good step up, or actually you have got some real good talent there. Let's get some game time into you and see what you can do, and then go forward again.
Yeah, Wells is a real good example of that, isn't he?
Yeah, massive. Yeah,
and, like Charlie is as well, isn't he?
Oh, so, yeah.
I texted him yesterday. He's the boomerang, isn't he? The championship boomerang.
Yeah,
it's worked out really well for him.
Yes, mate. And again, he's loved his time in the champ. You speak about him, he loves it, and it's set him up better for his experience now. And when you're 20 years old, you think you've got years ahead of you and you can do this and that. And then, and then you sort of get 23 and you're holding a tackle shield, you're bored of that. And then you drop down and go to your Bedford or your Nottinghams or wherever it is, Donny, you go and play a few seasons there, have a great time. And then suddenly, I'm now back in, Premiership, and I've had some really good experience. Now I'm ready to sort of really push on and get some bench spot starts and whatever it is. But you've got some great experiences from before.
Do the obviously you'll sit in a senior player group and have a lot of conversations with coaches. Are they actively looking in the champ for players, and is it something that you've ever been a part of as in those circles?
I haven't. I know they do actively look at this around the championship. Yeah, definitely. I haven't ever been. I don't get involved with all the. You may get asked a question about someone, because they might get an inkling that you might know someone, or might know someone who knows them, to make a phone call here and there. But honestly, no. But they're looking the whole time. Yeah, they're looking the whole time for, it depends where they sit in your squad as well. You might want a bit of experience, but it's not going to play week in, week out. You want someone there who has got a bit of a role model, can look after some young guys and be a role model to the next. It's huge, mate, what they try and do now in squads. And I think it's only going to get bigger, that, because I think with the way the money situation is, I think it's going to be that more finer to how to work your squad, especially at Prem level of that, really. And you might have a youngster, or you might want a senior guy who's got some great experience and is going to develop some young academy boys and help with the academy training, all these other bits and bobs. So I think it's quite vital, that sort of stuff.
Tom, you've been a fantastic guest, and it's brilliant to hear you speak so positively about the champ. We wish you all the best against Bath this weekend and for the rest of the season.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, guys. It was an absolute pleasure.
Cheers, Jonesy. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, boys. Thank you.
You're listening to the Championship Clubs podcast with me, Michael Casey, and Ben Gulliver. Check us out on social media at Champ Clubs Pod on Instagram and Twitter, and like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Championship action back this weekend, having had a bit of break for Easter, and there's been some talking points, it's fair to say. Sarries welcome back the England cohort and made some noise against Bedford on Sunday. Ealing, a bit of a statement win down in Cornwall, doing what Sarries couldn't, and of course Donny now 5 from 5. Gully, it's been another exciting weekend of action.
No, it's been good, hasn't it? I managed to catch the Sarries Bedford game. And I thought Bedford held their own for times in the game, and it was was a decent spectacle. I thought sort of the comms were good as well. So sort of Jack and Baz and Benny Earl did a good job, and it was a good game and a good thing to watch. Really enjoyed it. And then obviously I thought Pirates Ealing, I thought it'd be a little bit closer than it was, but I think looking at the result and speaking to a few people, it just looks like they just a bit too much power from really. And then obviously Cov got a nice little win against Ampthill. Hartbury sneaking a win at the death with Nottingham, and obviously Nottingham have had some news sort of gone out last week about 𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂 potentially moving on. Where that is, we're not sure yet, but he's obviously done a bit of work with Wasps over the summer and through COVID. So there's a bit going on in the league, and then clearly talking point is Donny marching on, beating Jersey, setting up some tasty fixtures over the next couple of months.
Yeah, it certainly has, and it's great to see for those podcast listeners. We've got Ben's cat joining us in the on the podcast recording studio for this, which is fantastic. But even more fantastic than that is today's guest. I am delighted to say that we are joined by a man very well known through the champ, certainly one of the league's personalities, currently at Jersey Reds, George Edgson. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
All good, mate. Happy to be here.
George, obviously, I saw you from the sidelines on Saturday. Close enough game up here at Castle Park. Obviously, you moved from Doncaster to Jersey in the summer. How's the reaction been to the weekend's defeat?
It was quite tough. It was a game we were definitely eyeing up to get a win. I felt like there was crucial moments in the game, especially before half-time, where we could have come away with points and we just didn't. And I think if we had done, that might have changed the outcome a little bit. I just felt like the tale of the afternoon was that we just didn't execute when we needed to, and we paid the price. And even though it wasn't a particularly high-scoring game, I feel like it could have gone either way if we'd have just like I said, executed when we were in those areas.
Edgy, just so. We've obviously been doing this for a few weeks, and we've been doing a bit of digging, and we had a brief chat to you before the pod started, and I wasn't fully aware of the Jersey situation and how you get to away games. And I've got a small idea of how it happens, but you're dropping in on the day, and it's a pretty brutal sort of schedule by all accounts. Could you just sort of fill us in on what you're actually doing on these away trips and how it all works with COVID?
So we'll test on a Tuesday and we'll test on a Thursday, and then on the Saturday morning, early doors will fly about 8:30, get to where we need to be about 9:30, 10, onto 2 separate buses, and then we'll get the coach straight to the game, off the coach, changing rooms, game, done, and just the same process back again. It doesn't feel as long as it probably sounds, but they are long days, when you're leaving in the morning at 6:30, 7 to get to the club, and then you're coming back at 8:00 having played a game, waited around the airport for a bit and all that nonsense. But in terms of dragging out, it's not as bad as it sounds, but obviously it would be more ideal to either have some home games or do what Jersey normally do, which is stay the night before, be fresh that morning, stay the night after, and fly back on the Sunday.
Not be as fresh on the Sunday morning.
Yeah.
We've had the opportunity, we talked to Phil Bolton in episode 2 about, and on 𝗵𝗂𝗂𝗂 in episode 1 about how COVID sort of affected teams' preparations going into the season. I guess, just as simply as the geographical challenge that you get with Jersey, that the challenges that the rest of us on the mainland have experienced are probably almost made even more extreme on the island. How was the preparation for the season? Talk us through sort of the timeline and what you knew and how you worked your way through that.
So we got I think we had a date in mind for the start of July initially, obviously, but everything kept changing week on week. And then we finally came in on August the 4th with speculation surrounding a November start date potentially. Then again, that moved to December moved to January, and so on. And obviously the coaches had a massive challenge on their hands, having to adapt to the goalposts moving. So obviously that would be quite tough, and you've got to keep a squad interested and motivated for 6 to 8 months. But it was nice to be doing something and not just sat at home, because there wasn't anything going on. The country was in lockdown, so to be playing and allowed out and about to have coffees and all that sort of good stuff was nice. And then obviously that shut down around November time. Jersey went back into lockdown, which was quite tough for everyone, because we couldn't fly off the island and go home because the isolation was too much on the way back. And now things are easing up on the island. I think we might be in a position to take advantage of the coffee shops and the restaurants again. The only challenge really was the motivation for an 8-month pre-season. I don't think any rugby player plays rugby for an 8-month pre-season ever. And then the other challenge was obviously dealing with not being able to go home as and when you would have liked. But that's nothing to do with the rugby club. It's just down to the government restrictions. And that was the only tough bit really.
What sort of things did you try and put in place as a group, or did the club try and battle off against that?
What, in terms of not going home?
Like, obviously, so in terms of the restrictions and what you could do, I'm assuming you were still training through this period.
Yeah, we were still training every day, yeah.
So were you able, I know that when we talked to sort of Bolts now and 𝗵𝗂, they discussed sort of things along the lines of they try and organise bits of round training whilst they're still in that group while sticking to COVID protocols. I guess you'd have quite a lot of new boys coming on the island. Are you in housemate bubbles? How like sort of you managed to group together to sort of battle the challenges that we're all going through?
I mean, it has been tough in that regard, because you can't really have a social unless it's behind closed doors, which isn't really allowed, because obviously you're more than the group. The numbers allowed. We had a couple in pre-season, and then when it went back into lockdown, we didn't manage to get anything done. And that wasn't due to the club restricting us. That was just Jersey Gulf was so tight on everything. We kind of just had to play by the rules. And obviously we were advised to travel in cars via your housemates, so don't mix. All your changing rooms were together with people who you lived with, or close enough. So all the lads that lived in my house were in one changing room. The other lads who lived on their own were split into another changing room. Just those sorts of challenges were pretty tough. Well, I think I was the first person to catch COVID, bizarrely. And then I think we had a couple more after that, but it didn't affect too many of the squad with the old, that system that every club's got in place as to who's had X amount of contact.
So it's like the systems work there, hasn't it? So what you've done, it shows the sacrifices you've made has stopped the spread of the virus. But I saw Bolts was mentioning that he's at a club and they're training in groups of 6, similar to what you guys are doing, just doing a lot of straight line running or you're in the gym putting on some timber. But you've not met anybody else from your team, but he hadn't. But did you manage to integrate like that? Were you training as a group, or was it just your 6, or was it just your 8?
So for the first week, it was groups of 6s. And then the second week might have been, 12 or 15. And then by the 3rd or 4th week, we were fully into full squad training. And then at one point, that cut back again to smaller groups. I think that was just due to the rise in numbers on the island and off the island.
I just think as well, like when you're new to a club, and you've done this a few times, is that those initial sort of, those piss-ups you go on, or those team socials are so important. And yeah, you're there to work hard and grind on, but there is that social element that everyone's been lacking. So I think, you got to commend sort of what you guys have done, but you must be itching to get on a proper good social on the island.
Yeah, lads are clucking for it. It's been a while. It has been a while. Like, it has been a really, really long time since we've had a proper social. So I think
it's a big part of champ rugby, isn't it? That side of it.
Yeah, massively. We had one the first week. We all came together. We had one at the end of that first week, and it was really helpful, useful. Came on the Monday. Everyone's a lot closer than they were on Friday. Since then, I think we've maybe had 2 socials since we've been here, and that's obviously, we can't do anything about that. It is just the way it is. But we definitely have been missing it, because you'd go through a regular season having a social at least every 2 months, maybe.
Yeah. And it's not even just going out on the beers. It's being able, doing other activities, a bit of whatever it is, whatever the social committee decides to do. It's just been taken away, hasn't it? So there's other ways of bonding apart from going out in the pub, obviously. But it's well, is there actually? I don't know. But it's just interesting to see how the coaches have managed to deal with it. But it seems to have worked for most clubs at the moment.
Yeah, it has worked. But again, everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's had to sacrifice, whether it's going out. So we've obviously, the wives and girlfriends of all the players and coaches, they can go out for dinner and stuff. But obviously we can't, because we're coming from the UK. So, the coaches, the staff have had to make sacrifices. Their family probably had to make sacrifices because they can't bring them with them, because they've been on the UK soil and they have to isolate until their test results are back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is just a massive ball ache, but it was the only way. I'm almost certain is that a Jersey were going to be allowed in the league.
So, given we're now sort of halfway through the season, where are the thoughts at of the club? Given that you've seemed to have managed to ride through these challenges, you're going to look forward to some home games, hopefully in the second half of the season. In fact, it's not quite the halfway stage for you guys. Of course, you had a bye week as well. What's the mood in the camp with the performances so far and the results?
The Richmond result was pretty disappointing. But again, people don't realise how tough they are to play against. Even in the national leagues, they're a tough outfit. And in the Championship, they've turned over Ealing the year I was there. They've taken Irish close before. They've beaten Jersey a few times. So that was a result that we were pretty disappointed about. We just didn't seem to click. We didn't seem to stick to the plan that we'd had in place. Then went into the Bedford week with a game plan that we executed very well. We stopped Bedford from playing like Bedford, which is always a challenge in itself. But up front, got into them and got the result. And then went into the week just gone with, everyone was in a pretty good headspace. We were quite excited about it. It was a massive challenge. So obviously, Donny were 4 from 4 at the time. In terms of battle of the forward packs, it was quite a big one up front, especially from scrum and line-out perspective. But I just don't think we, like I said earlier, took the opportunities that were available, and I just don't feel like we've had the rub of the green these last few weeks, especially with those Richmond results and the Donny result. But look, the mood's good. It also feels like someone said this the other day. It feels like we've been in the season for such a long time, when really we've been training since August, but only playing as of a few weeks ago. If this was a regular season, you'd be disappointed, but you'd have 25 other games to get into. But now it's a straight shootout with no cup competition. It's every man for himself, and these games are tough because you don't get a second crack to beat Doncaster again, Richmond again, Sarries again. It's one game and that's it.
Yeah. Have you found sort of Sarries being in the league and the hype around them? Obviously, you've been in one of those games, or you're watching one of those games. Like, how's that from a player's perspective? Is it exciting, or is it something?
I think it is exciting, but I feel like a lot of the general public, Saracens fans, and people that don't know much about the second tier of English rugby, I think they all thought that we were just a bunch of children that never played any high level rugby before ever, and that these poor men would be playing against some of the best names in world rugby, which they are amazing players, but a lot of lads in the Championship have played at the top level, been around the top level, and also rubbed shoulders with some of the best players in the world. And I thought that from a publicity perspective, it was this massive these poor champ lads, they're going to get slaughtered. It's going to be an absolute, murder every week. But I think we were all pretty confident in saying it's not going to be that easy. And And another point I made to you a couple of weeks ago was everyone was making excuses for Sarries when they were losing these pre-season games, and they lost against Pirates, saying they didn't have Billy, didn't have Marrow and Mako. And it's, they didn't have them, which is fair enough. But the team they put out was the team they had, and that was that. It was still a Saracens outfit. It was still world class, a lot of the boys, and they got filled in down at Pirates. And that was it. That was the result. There was nothing. No one could change anything about that. They played the players they had. They couldn't call anyone back from loan, and that was that really.
So this is like, before starting, this is one of my sort of theories or thoughts, is that where does that come from? That sort of poor old champ. It's a narrative that's when I was playing, and I said in the first podcast that I'm only starting to talk that I'm proud of playing Championship rugby, and I was going to ask you, Edgy, before or during or now, are you proud to play Championship rugby? And what?
Yeah, it's we're all playing at a professional level, but people don't realise that there is a level of professional rugby below the Premiership.
Yeah.
And that obviously then leads on to the amount of exposure that the league gets, because these Saracens fans or whoever, these Northampton fans or Leicester fans, a lot of them don't have a clue what goes on, week to week in the Championship, because it doesn't get the coverage it deserves. It doesn't get any games on TV. It might get 3 or 4 a year, and normally that's covered by a group of pundits that don't follow the league, have made notes up on the day. No disrespect to them, but they get the facts wrong because they don't have it. They're not fed any information, and they don't bother following the league. But yeah, I'd say I am proud to say again.
So it's frustrating, isn't it? Like you're saying about the guys coming down to cover the league, and like they don't know the league. It's not their fault. It's what they've been given. But I think it's almost like a misrepresentation of the league, because it's some good things going on in it, and I think it deserves a little bit more than how it's been treated over the past years.
I think that's kind of, and Gully, feel free to chirp in here, what we've tried to set up here, isn't it? In fact, that maybe take control of our own voice. And something you said there, Edgy, that I wanted to go back to was, that the vast majority of these boys playing Championship are either waiting for an opportunity, had opportunity, or have come extremely close to being the guys that we are seeing on TV week in, week out. And the gulf, or the perceived gulf as it perhaps is described in a lot of mainstream rugby media, isn't in fact a gulf. It's actually quite a narrow margin. Edgy, for the benefit of this podcast, you've had you're 25 now, 25 years old?
25, yeah.
But you've had a pretty incredible rugby career already. For the benefit of this show, let's just talk through that and go through some of the names that you've rubbed shoulders and some of the setups that you've been in, if you take us back from the beginning.
I started in the senior academy at Wasps from 18 to 21. And that final year I was on loan at Bedford. Picked up an ACL injury that year. Didn't really play much after November time, and Wasps didn't deem the quality of rugby that I'd been involved with as good enough to give me a first team contract. So that happens to loads of players every year. Signed for Bedford for a year, had great crack there, played an unbelievable team, finished third in the league that year, made some friends for life. Ealing were then knocking on the door then that following year. We were recruiting quite well, offering good packages, and the vision was there to kick on. And I feel like if they had a couple of results go their way that season, they would have taken Irish to the wire, and it could have been a different story. But again, picked up a foot injury in September, was out till January, came back fit. Face didn't really fit the team at that point. They were on a roll. They were getting results, and I don't think Ben Ward wanted to change that. So didn't get much love, didn't get selected. Again, just the way it goes. And then was left without a club for a bit. Doncaster needed a hooker, had a lot of friends there. Sam Olver, Steadman was there at the time. And then, had a great year at Donny, really enjoyed it. a bit of a bizarre year, but it was full of some characters, and then Jersey came along, and I'd had conversations with Harvey over the past few years anyway about potentially signing. I'd never got around to doing it, and I finally thought that it would be a good time to give it a crack. So although there's been a few clubs in there, you know, in the last few years, there's always been a reason. You know, it's never just been club hopping for the crack and a bit of extra kit. There's always been a reason for the move. You know, whether
it's important to sort of get that out there as well, Edgy. I had a lot of clubs, and you know, I moved because I wanted to move, or because of injury, and you know, and I enjoyed every move. Every move I did was great, and you get to play in a new group, you get to be coached by new people and meet a load of new friends, and you're still like really driven to play the highest level you can and see where that goes, aren't you? And it's like playing for different clubs. There's no problem with that. People move around the Prem, it's fine, and it's like you just got to try and find your club that you're comfortable in, and then kick on, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've loved every club I've been at. I've loved, you know, the time I've had there. I've never looked back on a year, and obviously you'd always want more game time, or you wouldn't want that certain injury, but I've never had any regrets about the move or, you know, the enjoyment factor. And Bedford, I played a lot of rugby. Ealing, not so much. Doncaster, played a load of rugby. You know, hopefully over this next few weeks with Jersey, I get some more game time. But in terms of like, you know, having fun and meeting people, I've enjoyed every second of it. And the Championship's quite a small league. You tend to play with the same people more than once, bump into the same people more than once. So from that aspect, obviously you get to know a lot of people, a lot of different coaches, people at clubs.
I mean,
I've got no regrets about that.
From someone who's obviously very much sort of in the Championship scene, but never stepped foot and will never step foot on a pitch, I think you see stories all the time of players just having that one good season and the deals do come along. So, I mean, talking to two guys who have represented several clubs in the league, it completely would make sense to me that if you've missed opportunities through injuries and perhaps that particular coach isn't playing you and there is another opportunity, that this is a shop window that, whilst maybe doesn't get the attention that it deserves perhaps in wider media, or perhaps will go on to funding, coaches look at it and the opportunity is there if you excel whichever club it happens to be in that season.
Yeah, 100%. If you think of what Tom Francis was saying last weekend, and their front row, their front row, six of them, they've all played champ rugby, and it's a place where Prem coaches are looking for the next sort of, you know, diamond in the rough as such, and pick up someone, and that's a real motivator for players, isn't it? I imagine.
Yeah, massively. I feel like with the money in the Premiership reducing, I feel like there actually might be an opportunity for a lot of Championship players to step up and fill those positions in the Premiership, especially those squad positions anyway, because they can't afford to bring these worldly South Africans over and these, you know, worldly Kiwi boys, because the money's not there anymore, or for now anyway. But I feel like you've got to know about the Championship. You know, a lot of coaches know about it, and there's obviously a massive handful of coaches that probably aren't so aware of the quality that is actually on show. Especially, Gully will know, in the forwards, it is a slog every single week. It might not be the most attractive brand of rugby for people to watch, the Championship, but in terms of being forward in that league, from a physicality point of view, you're definitely well up there. You wouldn't be underprepared heading into an environment in a league above, having played X amount of years in the Championship.
I fully agree, and it's that durability it sort of creates, isn't it? So just moving on a little bit. So just touched on funding, and this is something that I didn't ever experience, and it's something that's quite relevant. And I know it's a tricky question, but I want to sort of go down the angle of how it is for players at the moment. I don't want to get into sort of RFU issues and all that type of stuff that's like above my remit and knowledge. It's sort of, as a player on the ground, when you're getting news about the funding cutting, What's being said as a group? Are you coming together as a group, or are you splintering? I mean this is a championship group. Is it a collective, like we've got to try and fight this, or is it sort of, well, let's just see what happens? I don't know. It must be really tricky as a player, I suppose.
I mean, it's kind of taken out of your hands. I mean, when the announcements were made last season, I'm pretty sure the owners of all the clubs were told a day before, if not on the day, and then we were told the day after. So there's nothing you can do, because by the time you've taken on the news, it's all been done. Whatever cuts have been made, they're put in place. As a group, you're kind of on edge as to where that leaves the league, where that leaves the clubs financially. And obviously it affects wages and stuff, and it affects, recruiting and all that stuff. But I think it more affects the stuff behind the scenes that we don't, as players, really see. That's the sort of things that I think it affects, staff, physios, all the little bits, all the money that covers all those bits that the funding's great for, insurance policies. I think those are the things that it affects. Obviously, it affects the wages, but as a player, you just kind of take the news on the chin, and you can tweet about it, you can write about it, but I think whoever's making these decisions are pretty set in their ways as to what they think of the champ.
Of course, Edgy, you did tweet and write about it when those decisions came out, and I think people love a character, and obviously expressing the disappointment at the news of the funding. As you said, it was quite abrupt how it was broken, I thought. The disappointment with that, obviously it directly affects players in the league, but one of the things that was, I think, written as a reason for the cuts was that the division perhaps wasn't seen as a primary development pathway. Now, you've been in and around that environment and seen probably tens, if not more, people develop and then go on. And I think you tweeted something about the amount of players in the England squad that Six Nations weekend had actually played champ. Is that maybe the root of where a lot of that frustration about the funding announcement came from?
Yeah, I think that's one of the big factors. But I feel like if you just look throughout the Premiership now, there's so many players that have played in this league, and it has been, so valuable for them, for their development. And when you're playing in these teams, and I was in an academy with Will Stewart and Tom West, and both spent plenty of time at Nottingham. And then within a season and a half or two, one's in the England squad, one's been called into the England squad, and one's played in the Premiership final. And it's frustrating because it's clearly working. The league clearly works. It clearly has a purpose. One, to provide a second level of professional rugby for those that aren't in the Premiership, but to also develop players to kick on. And when you're surrounded by it all the time, and you're seeing these players move on, that's the frustrating bit, because yes, a lot of them might not go on to play for England, but a lot of them do go on to play in the Premiership or other top leagues around the world. Players that you wouldn't even think of have had stints at championship clubs, whether it was years ago or for a year or two. There's a lot of players that have been through the league and come out the other side.
Yes, it's fascinating, isn't it? I think just touching on social media, I'm just going to line it up a little bit. And mate, I just got a question to ask you. Are you Champ Life?
No, I'm not.
But
whoever runs Champ Life, that is something he would say if asked about it. No, I'm not. I'm not.
Just for any listeners who might not be aware, there's an Instagram account. It's champ___life, and it's pretty sort of gallows humour about the league, isn't it? I think it is quite amusing, but if you took it too seriously, you could probably get very upset. But so 3G's Edgy, that's not you.
3G's on my new hairline, that is not me.
Okay, we can move on.
You can move on. Now, I've announced it to everyone, everywhere. 3G's, that is not me.
If you don't know what 3G means, it's genuine.
Yeah, and otherwise your head's getting big.
What do you make then? Just, I know we've made the point sort of jokingly, but we touched on it a little bit with you, Gully, and with Bolts. What do you make of sort of a bit of the humour that is perpetuated between champ players, where I think self-deprecating is a little bit strong, but you have that ability to sort of take your mick out of yourselves, because I think it's obvious, I think, for people like myself watching the game, that the margin between Premiership and Championship is pretty damn close, but the reality of it on the day-to-day is quite wide. Is it just a case that humour makes it easier to swallow? Why do you think there is that air of sort of self-mickey, or is that just rugby in general?
I think one, that's just rugby. It's like everyone's got the ability to take the piss out of themselves or their situation, but it's like a special thing in the Championship. You just can take the piss so easily, whether it's on the pitch, off the pitch. Especially if you've been around the league for a while, you've seen players come and go, you've been involved in situations which, the average rugby fan wouldn't believe. Those sorts of situations and stories tend to happen mostly in the Championship, whether it's, I don't know, players getting sacked or medical stories. You have to laugh about it, because if you don't, you'll cry.
I was half tempted to say anything that you want to share with us there, but I feel like we'll swerve on.
No, I'm not opening myself up, but obviously it's like you've got to have played in the league and experienced it for what it is. Being on loan, you find some stuff out, but you've got to really be fully engulfed in the environment to fully appreciate some of the shit that happens. But it is quite funny, and sometimes you just have to have a laugh.
So did you say, was Bedford your first loan experience in the Champ then, or was it been rough?
No, actually, when I was 20, I went on loan to Rotherham for half a season, and 𝗖𝗵𝗺𝗺𝗀𝗀 had just taken over. And I got to the playoffs the year before with 𝗖𝗵𝗺𝗺𝗪𝗺𝗀𝗺. 𝗪𝗪𝗺 went on to Wasps, and then I went to Roth for half a season, and learned loads in 6 or 8 games, absolutely loads. I've been at Blackheath for half of that year, and on the Monday it was like, what's your thoughts about going on loan to Rotherham? And I was like, what can I think about it? And they were like, no. So I was like, right, but then I'll see you at training tomorrow, and then went up the following day.
How was Rotherham? Did you get to play in a Roth Donny game, or?
No, I didn't. My first game was actually against Bedford.
Oh, okay.
So Bolts was playing, Lumber, Jordan Burns, Toops. It was quite a good Bedford team. Obviously, I was 20 is quite young to be playing in the Championship, especially as a forward. So I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't really have any expectations. I wasn't as much of a rugby nose back then as I am now. So I hadn't really paid much attention to the Championship as a whole, because my day-to-day was full-time with the first team, and then in the evenings off to loan. So you're always thinking about what they're doing on the weekend and who their next game is. And then got sent up to Roth for half a season. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Played with Bomber, Lloyd Hayes, Calla. Who else was there? Mark Tampin. Some characters, some good names, lads that I'm still friends with now. So that was my first experience, was playing for them. And then the year after that, on loan to Bedford.
So you would have played a bit of A-League at that point as well?
Yeah, so I was playing A-League. I played A-League for 2 years at that point. And the A-League, like I've mentioned it before in that piece I did after the cuts, is the problem with the A-League is 1 week you're playing against the World 15, which is great. And then the following week you're playing against 3 first-team players, 2 academy lads, and 14 boys that just finished their A-levels. And they need to fill these slots with players that haven't played at a decent level or, aren't involved in that actual team environment. And the games can be meaningless sometimes. And I think a lot of people agree with me there. I said that I learned so much more in those 6 or 7 games of Champ Rugby than I did playing in the A-League. Although you're playing against some good lads, if you lost on that Monday, it wasn't the end of the world. You just get rolled out the following week. But if you lost for Roth that season, I think Burnell had been brought in to get them out of relegation, and that's what he did. But when you're in that environment, a lot of lads, if they get relegated, that might be the end of their champ career. It might lead on to, to the end of their career potentially. So you deal with real life consequences playing in a championship environment. I feel that like in the A-League sometimes it's very hit and miss, and the approach to it is quite relaxed most of the time.
Sean,
I can vouch for that, mate. I played a bit of second team when I was in the 𝗬𝗂𝘂𝗃 academy, which is a bit different many moons ago. And I think I made my A-League debut for Leicester when I was 29, and I was like, what is this? It's just I'm playing league, and I was 29. I couldn't even see the value for the younger lads because it was just a meaningless fixture at the time. But then, like you said, the following week we had an unbelievable backline. So did Northampton, who were playing, and it was a high quality game. And you're then practicing what the first team do correctly. But if it doesn't have the right players in it, it's not got the quality of players, and it has no real value in comparison to a championship game.
Well, you just struggle to get anything out of it. For example, there was games where I was at hooker and I just moved to hooker, and I was playing with 3 or 4 second rows that had never played a game for Wasps in their life. I had no idea who they were. Turning up on a Monday, learning line-out calls that afternoon. And you got your own personal performance to worry about, but also it's like, as a youngster, when you're playing in the A-League, there and then it's a massive, massive deal for you. So you want to put the best account of yourself forward. And sometimes if you're playing with all the shags and you have no idea who they are, it can be really tough. Especially, like I said, when you come against the World 15 one week and 𝗬𝗂𝘂𝗃 have decided to play every lad that didn't play on the weekend in that Monday night team, you get absolutely licked out for 80 minutes.
Yeah.
I've been there. Yeah.
So here's an interesting one. Put you both on the spot then. I mean, Ed, I think prior to being in the Wasps Academy, were developed through the 𝗂𝗵𝗺𝗃𝗀𝗃 college system as well, which is obviously a renowned sort of breeding ground. What do you think the ideal situation scenario is for basically Premiership Academy players? Do you think that playing champ should almost be mandatory? Or what do you think is the best way to make sure that these players, because ultimately you can only have one squad of players per Premiership team, what would you do with all the rest of these lads that are contracted to these clubs every weekend?
I think, from my personal point of view, the pathway is pretty good for most players. There'll be a Nat 2, Nat 1 first team route, and then you do have the guys like a Marrow who. 19, he's good to go first team. So there are those freaks that are within the system. I think I think Tom Francis mentioned it last week, there's a crop of players between 18 and 22, 23, and it's a development stage. They develop at different times. And I think, that Nat 1, men's rugby championship and then back into a Prem team is really valuable to that player. I don't know what you think, Edgy.
Oh, massively. I've never played Premiership rugby, and it's obviously a goal of every championship players. But there's, like you said, there's only a handful of players that could probably skip the pathway and be ready from the off. And you know who they are. You know who they're going to be, that have that ability to do that. But most people need time developing in some sort of league. Some lads might do National 1, be on the bench for a Prem game, and then just keep playing Premiership and never do the Championship. And some lads might, skip it all, like I just said, and go straight in. It all depends, really. I just feel like for a front row and from a forwards perspective, the experience is invaluable if you're not in that professional setup playing week in, week out.
Yeah.
For you now, sort of personally, with being 25, and what are the motivations for you, and what does the future hold for like George Edgson? If you've got another year at Jersey, how's it looking, and your motivations moving forward?
My motivation is just to play. Like any team, any player, you can have a few good games and everything can change like that. And I feel, last year got a good amount of game time. This year, extended pre-season, short amount of games. So my main focus is just playing and taking everything as it comes. Movement in whatever market will be late this year due to what's gone on. But if I was fortunate enough to be offered something at Jersey, then it's definitely something I'd explore. But I just feel like game time is imperative, and my motivation moving forward is obviously I want to kick on. I've always wanted to kick on. I feel like I know firmly what I want out of my rugby career, and I'd kick myself if I got to the end of it and I didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve. But sometimes that happens.
And I think, like, for you and like someone that I know quite well is like Charlie Clare, who's 29, and he's Leicester, Bedford, Northampton, then back to Bedford, and now he's at starting every week for Leicester. So it's like, it's a real, it can be done. It's like that.
It can be done, and there's plenty of players that have proven it. And obviously Charlie's route's been a tough one, but he's come out on top. I just feel like you've got to persevere and just be pretty patient. There's a lot of players that have probably waited a long time to get a sniff at the top, and it has happened for them. Yeah. I think Dave Ward went to Quins at 28.
Yeah,
which is, it's not old, but it's not young. And went on to play loads of games for them and was a star for many years. And I'm sure this season you'll see players that are going to sign for Premiership clubs that have waited patiently over the years and just grinded it out season upon season. And I feel like when you come to the end of playing 5 or 6 years of flat out champ rugby, there is a massive element of respect and fair play. You've stuck in there for that long, and you will get your reward.
George, I think that was brilliant, and I think you can say that we wish you all the best for the rest of the season and whatever the rest of your rugby career holds. You've been a fantastic guest, and thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Cheers, Edgy.
That was the Championship Club podcast with Michael Casey and Ben Gulliver. Check us out on social media at @ChampClubsPod on Instagram and Twitter, and subscribe and like our YouTube channel.